What does it mean to preserve something? To hold on to it when the rest of the world races forward, tearing down and building over? There's a country that's made preservation its soul, where ancient forests still stand because no one dared to cut them all down, where medieval ruins aren't demolished but dressed in roses, where indigenous people still follow reindeer across ancestral lands, where everyone, by law, has the right to walk freely through nature, because some things should never be owned. This is Sweden, a nation that refused to choose between past and future, between wild and civilized, between progress and preservation. Here, more than 2,500 Viking runestones still stand where they were carved 1,000 years ago. Wolves have returned after being driven to near extinction. And several islands remain as wild as they were when the ice retreated after the last ice age. In a world of constant change and destruction, Sweden asks a different question. What if we kept it? What if we protected it? What if we passed it on? Our journey begins with Sweden's first great act of preservation, the Stockholm Archipelago. 30,000 islands stretching from the capital eastward into the Baltic. Most countries would have built on them, developed them, claimed them. Sweden did something else. They protected them. In 2009, parts of the outer archipelago became a national park, but the real preservation happened long before that. Embedded in Swedish tradition and law for centuries, Allemansrätten, the right to roam. This revolutionary law says that nature belongs to everyone. You can walk across any land, camp anywhere for a night, pick berries and mushrooms, swim from any shore. As long as you don't disturb, don't destroy. These iconic red cottages, painted with Falun red, a pigment made from copper mine byproducts since the 1500s, are themselves acts of preservation. The same color, the same design, passed down through generations, not because Swedes fear change, but because they recognize beauty worth keeping. And the preservation works. Baltic grey seals, hunted nearly to extinction by the 1970s, now number in the tens of thousands across the Baltic Sea. Their population recovered because Sweden chose protection over profit. White-tailed eagles tell the same story. By 1970, only a few dozen pairs remained, poisoned by pesticides. Sweden banned the chemicals, protected nesting sites, and waited. Today, over 1,000 breeding pairs soar across Sweden's coasts and waterways. One of Europe's greatest conservation comebacks. When Swedes pick wild strawberries, blueberries, and mushrooms on these islands, they're participating in something older than their country. Allemansrätten isn't just about access. It's about responsibility. Take only what you need. Leave no trace. Respect what will be here long after you're gone. The archipelago could have been luxury resorts and private beaches. Instead, it remains wild, accessible, preserved, not frozen in time, but living and protected. This is the Swedish way, not preservation as museum piece, but as living heritage. 200 kilometers south lies Sweden's most remarkable act of architectural preservation, the island of Gotland, and its crown jewel, Visby, the city of roses and ruins. In most places, medieval walls this old would have been torn down centuries ago to make room for expansion. But in 1995, UNESCO declared Visby a World Heritage Site, and recognizing what Sweden already knew. Some things are worth keeping exactly as they are. These cobblestone streets have been walked for 8 centuries. The stone buildings, the narrow alleys, the medieval layout, all preserved. Preserved with all the beautiful imperfection of genuine age. At its peak in the 1200s, Visby had 17 churches. After the Danish invasion of 1361, 13 were left to ruin. And here's the extraordinary part. Sweden left them that way. For over 600 years, these roofless churches have stood open to the sky. Instead of demolishing them or rebuilding them, Swedes made a radical choice. Let nature and history coexist. Every summer, thousands of roses climb these walls, planted and tended by residents. The ruins are cared for, but not reconstructed, preserved in their broken beauty. This is preservation as philosophy. The churches aren't useful buildings anymore, but they're useful memories. They teach us about impermanence and resilience. They show that endings don't have to mean erasure. Visby is still a living city. People live in medieval buildings, shop in ancient marketplaces, celebrate Medieval Week each August, not as reenactment, but as connection. The past isn't something to visit in a museum. It's where people live. Beyond the city, Gotland offers lessons in geological preservation. The Raukar, limestone sea stacks, were shaped over millions of years and exposed after the last ice age. Sweden protects them not with fences and guards, but with Allemansrätten's implicit contract. You can visit, but you must respect. And remarkably, people do. Visby proves that preservation isn't about keeping things dead and under glass. It's about keeping them alive, relevant, and accessible. A medieval city that breathes, changes seasons, hosts festivals, and welcomes visitors, but never loses what makes it unique. "400 kilometers north, we discover why Sweden preserves not just culture and monuments, but the very land itself. Welcome to the High Coast, where preservation means protecting geological processes that have been unfolding for thousands of years. These dramatic cliffs are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but not because humans built something remarkable. They're protected because nature did. 20,000 years ago, ice 2 kilometers thick pressed down on this land. When it melted, the earth began to rise, and it's still rising. The high coast is one of the world's most dramatic examples of post-glacial rebound, a geological process that will continue for thousands of years to come. Sweden could have developed this coastline: hotels, roads, resorts. Instead, in 2000, it became a World Heritage Site. Not to stop time, but to protect time itself, to let geological processes continue undisturbed. From Skullabergets summit, you see what preservation at landscape scale looks like. Vast forests stretch to the horizon, broken only by small villages. Sweden owns much of this land, but doesn't exploit it. The trees grow old, die, and decompose, the way forests are supposed to work. Old-growth forests like these are rare in Europe. Most were cut down centuries ago, but Sweden preserved patches throughout the country, not because they're profitable, but because they're irreplaceable. These trees are part of an ecosystem that takes centuries to develop and minutes to destroy. Sweden has one of the world's largest and most intensively managed moose populations, not by accident, but by design. Protect the forests, and the animals return. The villages along the high coast show preservation in balance. People still fish, still live, still work. But heavy industry is kept away. Development is carefully managed. The goal isn't to freeze the landscape, but to ensure it remains recognizable to future generations. In protected areas, forests are allowed to age naturally, without industrial clear-cutting or plantations. Just forest, being forest. Standing here, you realize preservation isn't passive. It's an active choice, renewed every day. Sweden could profit from this land. Instead, it protects it. That's not by chance. It's national character. Now we journey to the far north, to witness perhaps Sweden's most profound preservation, not just of land, but of an entire people and their way of life. This is Lapland, and this is where preservation becomes survival. Above the Arctic Circle, Sweden faces a choice that defines a nation's soul. These vast territories, nearly a quarter of Sweden's land, could be mines, could be dams, could be logged bare. And some of that has happened. But large areas remain protected, reserved for their oldest inhabitants. The Sami are Europe's only officially recognized indigenous people. For thousands of years before Sweden existed, they lived here, following the reindeer through seasonal migrations. In many countries, indigenous peoples were displaced or destroyed. But Sweden chose a different path: protection of culture and rights. Since 1993, the Sami have had their own parliament, Sametinget. They have protected rights to reindeer herding across vast areas of Lapland. It's not perfect, and conflicts remain, but it represents something rare. A modern nation trying to preserve an ancient culture, not as museum piece, but as living practice. This preservation matters because the Sami hold knowledge that took millennia to develop. Which plants heal, where reindeer find food in deep winter, how to survive in conditions that would kill the unprepared. This isn't folklore, it's survival science passed through generations. The midnight sun and polar night, these extremes shaped Sami culture. By protecting their rights to follow traditional migration routes, Sweden preserves not just people, but an entire way of reading and responding to this extreme environment. In 1909, Sweden created its first national parks, including Abisko and Sarek in Lapland. These weren't just nature preserves. They recognized that some landscapes are too important, too irreplaceable to develop. And then there's Sweden's most controversial preservation project, the wolf. By the late 1960s, wolves were functionally extinct. Sweden could have celebrated. Instead, they protected the wolves that naturally returned from Finland and Russia. Today, around 400 to 500 wolves roam Swedish forests. The wolverine, the lynx, the brown bear, all persist in Lapland's wilderness. Not without conflict, reindeer herders lose animals to predators. But Sweden keeps trying to balance preservation of both predators and indigenous culture. It's messy, it's difficult, but they don't give up. Here in Lapland, you can walk for days and never see another human. That's not emptiness, that's preservation. The preservation of silence, of darkness, of cold, of wilderness as it existed before large-scale industrial development. Sweden guards this jealously, knowing that once lost, it's lost forever. Preserving Lapland means preserving complexity. Sami culture, reindeer herding, predators, wilderness, indigenous rights. Most nations would compromise, develop, exploit. Sweden preserves, imperfectly, sometimes clumsily, but persistently. While Sweden preserves wilderness and living culture, it also safeguards something equally precious: memory itself. Across this country, monuments and castles aren't just tourist attractions. They're Sweden's commitment to never forget. Kalmar Castle stands where it has stood for 800 years. Sweden could have demolished it when military technology made medieval fortresses obsolete. Instead, they preserved it, restored it, and opened it to the people, because a nation that forgets its castles might forget what they stood for. This is where the Kalmar Union was signed in 1397. Walking these halls, you walk through Swedish history, medieval fortress, Renaissance palace, museum. Each era left its mark, and Sweden preserved them all, refusing to erase one period for another. On the island of Öland stands Sweden's most romantic preservation, Borgholm Castle. Once the grandest royal residence in Sweden, it burned in 1806. But these aren't neglected ruins, they're curated ruins. Every summer, concerts are held inside these roofless walls, with opera singers performing where kings once danced and rock bands playing where queens held court. Built by Denmark in 1549 and retained after Sweden's 1658 conquest, Landskrona Citadel survived because it remained useful and well-designed. For nearly 5 centuries, it evolved from fortress and prison to a protected heritage site. Today, its ramparts are lived in by the public, not locked away as relics. Just north, on a hill overlooking Lake Vättern, stands Brahehus Castle, burned in 1708 and left exactly as the flames left it. These aren't forgotten ruins, they're carefully preserved ruins, because sometimes preservation means accepting that fire and time are part of the story too. But Sweden's preservation goes far deeper than castles. On the southern coast stands Ales stones, Ales Stenar, 59 boulders arranged in a ship shape, dating to the late Iron Age. Their purpose remains uncertain. Anyone can visit, anyone can touch the stones. The preservation doesn't separate people from history, it connects them. Allemansrätten applies here too. You can visit the past, but you must respect it. Across Sweden lie Viking ruins, longhouses, burial mounds, and stone ship settings, many preserved where they were built more than 1,000 years ago. While wooden Viking ships rarely survive intact and are conserved in museums once found, the places that launched them remain embedded in the landscape. Together, these ruins tell of journeys to Byzantium, settlements in England, and a society shaped by the sea, proof that preservation, when done carefully, can endure across centuries. So what makes Sweden different? After all these preserved landscapes, protected monuments, and safeguarded traditions, what's the principle that ties it all together? It's this. Sweden believes that some things matter more than profit, more than convenience, more than progress for progress's sake. Some things, nature, history, culture, identity, must be preserved, even when preservation is costly or inconvenient. This philosophy shows up everywhere, in midsummer celebrations unchanged for centuries, in fika, the daily coffee ritual that preserves human connection in a fast-paced world, in the careful restoration of old buildings rather than demolition and replacement. But preservation doesn't mean stagnation. Sweden is one of the world's most innovative countries. Tech startups, renewable energy, forward-thinking social policies. The difference is that Swedes innovate while protecting what matters. New doesn't have to destroy old. The wolves, the eagles, the seals. They exist because Sweden made preservation a priority. It would be cheaper, easier, more profitable to eliminate predators, develop wild lands, and exploit resources without limit. But Sweden chose the harder path. Allemansrätten, the right to roam, is preservation's purest expression. Nature belongs to everyone, so everyone must protect it. Access creates responsibility. Experience creates care, and care creates preservation. Preservation is taught young. Swedish children learn to identify birds, to respect the forest, to pick mushrooms sustainably. They learn that they're inheritors of something precious and that they must pass it on intact. Stockholm is a modern capital, innovative and forward-thinking. But its medieval old town, Gamla stan, is preserved at its heart. New Stockholm grows around it, not over it. The city remembers even as it changes. When the Sami parliament meets, when reindeer herders follow ancient migration routes, when Sami children learn duodji from their grandparents. That's preservation, not of the past, but through the present, for the future. The Swedish word lagom means just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. Balance. It applies to preservation too. Preserve enough to remember, to maintain ecosystems, to honor the past, but not so much that the present can't breathe. From Lapland's Arctic wilderness to Visby's roses climbing medieval walls. From the Stockholm Archipelago's 30,000 islands to the high coast's rising cliffs, Sweden is a living museum. But unlike a museum, nothing here is behind glass. You can touch it, walk through it, live in it. In a world obsessed with the new, Sweden asks, what if we kept some of the old? What if we protected it? What if we passed it on to people we'll never meet? But who'll need it as much as we do? There's a Swedish proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Preservation is planting trees you'll never sit under. It's protecting places you may never visit again. Sweden isn't perfect. Preservation is contested, sometimes contradictory, always challenging. But the commitment remains. To remember, to protect, to pass on. Not everything, but enough. Lagom. Just the right amount.